Good morning. Good morning to everyone who is here in the room and to those joining us over Zoom. I am Shelley Young, Chair of the Lifelong Learning Committee. We are so happy to welcome everyone to our first event of the year, which was developed in partnership with the Israel Committee. This is a very special program because you will gain insight into the impact the Mack Ness Fund has had on Israel, especially the Negev region, leading to positive innovations in a wide swath of industries, including agriculture, technology, film, cannabis, pharmaceutical growth, and tourism. You will hear from one of our 5 founding members, Jerry Flansbaum. We are grateful he had the foresight to recognize the importance of establishing this fund to foster development in the Negev region. We are so fortunate to have these visionary leaders, both here and in Israel, to present to us today. Before introducing today's speakers, I want to thank those people at our synagogue who made today's program possible and helped to bring it to fruition. Before introducing, Rabbi Randy Musnitsky, who had the foresight to establish lifelong learning, as well as the Israel Committee. We're sorry she can't be with us today. THS clergy and staff generously supporting, hosting, and promoting the program, setting up the registration, and helping us prepare the room today. Josh Greenbaum, whose mentorship and support both today and behind the scenes has made this program possible. He is our technical wizard. Lynn Ann Kotler, our Director of Congregational Learning, who has helped to plan and promote the program and oversees lifelong learning activities. Our hardworking committee members, many of whom are in the room today. We are so fortunate to have so many committed, engaged volunteers. I want to recognize them for their energy, passion, and drive, which brought this program to life. We are so grateful to them. You will be hearing more about the Mack Ness Fund and its origins and initiatives, but first, I want to introduce our speakers. Dr. Howard Tepper is chairman of the Mack Ness Fund Advisory Council. He has been associated with the fund since 2009. Dr. Tepper has been an active volunteer with the Federation of Greater Metro West for 40 years. He also serves on the National Council of APAC and splits his time between Livingston, New Jersey, New York City, and Tel Aviv, where he is a part-time resident. We are honored to have him with us here today. Rini Carniol is the U.S. Director of the Mack Ness Advisory Council of the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Metro West. Rini oversees grant management for 2 major philanthropic funds associated with the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Metro West, the Mack Ness Fund and the Grana Fund. Her work entails assisting the council members in determining funding priorities, assessing grant decisions, and monitoring the programs after the grants have been awarded. She also ensures the grants are paid properly to a recognized nonprofit in Israel. We are so delighted she can join us today. Odelia Carucci, the Israeli-based director of the Mack Ness Fund. Odelia lives in Beersheba, the largest city in the Negev. She brings to the Mack Ness Fund more than 15 years of public service experience, including serving as a parliamentary aide in the Knesset earlier in her career. Like Rini, she provides guidance to the Mack Ness Fund Advisory Council, and as boots on the ground, she leads efforts to promote the grant requests review the grant applications, organize and lead Ness site visits in Israel, and provides guidance, support, and encouragement to grant recipients. We look forward to hearing from her, and we are grateful she can spend time with us today. Finally, we are so fortunate that Jerry Flansbaum can join us today from Israel, where he resides with his wife Marilyn, his daughter, and grandsons and great-granddaughter. He is a founding member of Temple Har Shalom, and we thank him for his foresight and involvement with establishing the Mack Ness Fund. A former Temple Har Shalom president, he practiced law in Warren and served as the Warren Township prosecutor for 28 years until his retirement in 2001. He made Aliyah in 2006. We are excited to hear about the legacy of Mack Ness from Jerry. Now, without further preamble, I will turn the program over to Jerry.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm hoping you can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. We have a lot of ground to cover in a short period of time, so if I talk fast, forgive me. But the story you're going to hear today is not one story, but two. It's not only the story of a remarkable man, Mack Ness, but it's the story of a remarkable Jewish community, ours. Together, working as what I have come to realize is a posthumous partnership with Mack Ness. And that partnership in the last 15 years, and I am not kidding you, has changed the face of the Negev, both literally and figuratively, in ways we could never have imagined. And that story starts 5 minutes from where you're sitting now. Mack Ness, of course, lived in Watchung. Anybody traveling from Warren to Watchung passes his property every day. It's on Mountain Boulevard. In case you didn't know, it's that still undeveloped tract of land that runs from the old Twin Brooks Country Club west to the senior citizen housing. Mack lived there for most of his adult life. As you can see for that picture, he's a hard-looking man, and he was difficult to deal with, cantankerous, shunned almost everyone around him, and never gave a dime to charity. He lived like a pauper. I saw where he lived a few days after he died. A bare mattress with no linens. A kitchen with a bare bulb, nothing on the walls, not a stove, not an oven, just a hot plate and a small refrigerator, a couple of cans of goods on a shelf, and that was it. But Mack Ness, always one to save a penny rather than spend it, got into his car on a spring day in 2002 and took a long ride for him because he was a man who never in his life even saw New York City. He took a ride to Scotch Plains because he wanted to save some money. And he came to the offices of the Jewish Federation, and he walked in dressed as he always is, in his overalls and his boots. And were it not for the fact that he asked to see Stanley Stone, our executive vice president, he would have been asked to leave as a homeless man. But Stanley Stone came out to greet him, brought him in his office, and I think most of you know the story. He presented Stanley with a check for $75,000. And he said, "You're the cheapest people that can manage my money. I've checked you out. So here's $75,000. If you do a good job with it, there might be a little bit more." Stanley recovered his surprise and said to him, "You know, you're going to get a large tax deduction for this. Do you do your own tax returns?" He said, "Yes." He said, "We can provide you with an accountant free of charge." That was a good idea to Mack. He gave him the telephone number to call, and he ripped it up. He said, "That says 212. I don't make telephone calls for toll telephone calls. They cost money." That's the kind of man he was. So he asked him who his attorney was. And he said, "Victor Rizzolo, a respected attorney in Somerville." And I knew Victor. And I called him and I said, what's going on? And he said, I'm not surprised. He said, Mack Ness has always wanted to give his money to the state of Israel. He said, in fact, the only time I ever saw Mack smile was when he talked about Israel. Who knew? Who knew? Of course, we decided that leaving his money to the state of Israel might not be the best idea. And so it was agreed he would leave it to the Community Endowment Fund. 2 years later, Mack Ness died at the age of 92 on January 14th, 2004. Immediately, a committee was set up. Eleanor Rubin was the first chair. And we struggled to find a mission statement, which we really never agreed on. The mission statement that you'll eventually see on the screen only came about after the merger of Central New Jersey with Greater Metro West. But we didn't need words. We wanted action. And so we organized ourselves. And when the first distribution came in from the estate, we took $1 million of that money and did what Mack Ness asked us to do in his will. He left us only two conditions: that all of the money be used in Israel, and that he wanted a memorial set up for his mother, his brother, and himself. And so in May of 2005, in the city of Arad, in the Negev, with Victor Rizolo as the guest of honor, we established the memorial in his name, the Mack Fund, the Mack Ness Memorial Loan Fund, today known as Karen Ness. I'll talk a little bit more about it a little bit later. It's not really our focus today. But it's a fund that it does not give out loans, but it guarantees loans made by the bank, loans that would not have otherwise been made to entrepreneurs, farmers, for any host of number of ideas. That was in 2005. The impact of the Ness Loan Fund was almost immediate. And 2.5 years later, the first mission from the Ness Committee, which we then called ourselves, today we are the Ness Advisory Board, the first mission of the Ness Committee came to Israel to start looking at sites and budgets and people, because we were about to issue our first grants. We hadn't yet. And while we were there, we got an unexpected invitation from the president of Israel. And the next day we went to Beit HaNassi, that's the White House, the Israel White House. And Shimon Peres brought us up to his private office on the second floor, sat us down and said, now tell me all about this man named Mack Ness. That meeting took place exactly 2 years and 2 days after Mack Ness' passing. And we told him. And the following day, no, that was a Wednesday, on a Friday, I don't know if you can see it, but this article appeared in the Jerusalem Post. Same picture that you just saw. The headline read, "A dead New Jersey recluse helps make the desert bloom." Well, we had not yet made our first grant. And had we been able to envision 15 years in advance, we would have told the president in our best New Jersey slang, Shimon, titles mean very little here in Israel. Shimon, you ain't seen nothing yet. And that brings us to today, 15 years later. A little bit about the loan fund. As I think you'll see on the next slide, today over $35 million has been guaranteed in loans. Miami thought it was a good idea. They joined us with $1 million of their own. What we do is hear applications for people who need their loans guaranteed because the bank would not make the loan otherwise. We're open to everybody. We've given loans not only to the Jews, but to Bedouins for any number of projects. Just a couple, because this, again, is not our focus. But Bedouins come to us with the same needs. construction equipment, opening up a pharmacy, a bridal salon, and yeah, even a young man who wanted to import 50 head of cattle from Lithuania to fatten them up in the Negev desert. There was another man, and then I'm finished with this, but it's interesting. It was a man who was importing goods from China. And his Chinese exec came for a visit, and they went out to dinner. And he ordered chicken feet. The waiter said, "We don't eat chicken feet in Israel." Well, Israel consumes over 90 million chickens a year. That's 180 million chicken feet. And by the time that dinner was over, the man had a new business. He came to us for a grant because he was opening up his second factory. And today he is exporting chicken feet to China by the container load. As for the Ness granting committee, as you can see, given out $10 million in grants. And we have $10 million left to go. We give out seed money, and you're going to hear more about that. We go where people don't want to go. We take the risk first. And what it has produced, you will hear, it is unimaginable. We can go from place to place and hear from people and even from towns and cities. But for Mack Ness, because we made it happen. I like to think of us as the Nachshon of the Negev. Nachshon, as you may recall, was the first person to take the chance and step foot in the Red Sea when Moses had parted the waters. He took the first step, and the rest of the Israelites followed. That's what we're doing in the Negev. But we had a problem. We had a fund of a limited amount of money, and we were giving out loans, and we were becoming an engine for economic development throughout the entire Negev. But the Negev was getting sexy, and people were starting to take an interest in the Negev, and we realized that we could either be the engine that we were or run the risk of becoming the caboose. And so we had to make a decision, which we did. The Ness Loan Fund, the Ness Fund, the Mack Ness Fund, is no longer a fund that will last in perpetuity. We now have a sunset in about 12 years. But if we can do in the next 12 years what we have done in the last 15, then we have done a good job, and we have served Mack Ness well. But all of this has to be seen in a bigger picture. And that's what I want to conclude with. All of what's happening and everything you're going to hear today has to be seen in a bigger context. Because this posthumous partnership of ours, as we put his money to work in the Negev and ensure his legacy, in a greater sense, we are carrying on the dream that David Ben-Gurion had for the Negev and for the state of Israel. We are helping to make the state of Israel what it was always meant to be, a light unto the nations, a place today, especially in the Negev, where the word Zionist isn't pejorative. It isn't an accusation. It isn't a curse. Zionism isn't whispered in the Negev. It is a badge proudly and loudly worn, whether it is cultivating the land or whether it is cutting-edge technology. Zionism is alive and well and thriving in the Negev, and we see it in every site we visit, in every project that we fund, every budget we look over, every project that we review, and every person we talk to. It's alive and well and thriving. When the Ness Fund advisory board comes here every year. And when I go down to the Negev 6 or 7 times a year, we say it over and over and over again to ourselves. What if Mack Ness could have seen? What if Mack Ness could have seen? Well, as you know, Mack Ness can't see. But you can, and I hope you will. And today we will suggest some ways that you can do that. And I want to promise you something. If you become involved with us, if you come down to the Negev and see what we are accomplishing, I can promise you this. It will be the most rewarding and the most inspiring experience of your Jewish life. It has been for me. It has been for everyone connected with the Mack Ness Fund, and it can be for you. As Paul Harvey used to say, and now you're going to hear the rest of the story.
Morning. Thank you, Jerry. So you all have the background of how we got here. Let me just speak to you a little bit about where we are, what we're talking about when we speak about the Negev. You can see the map here to my right. This is the lower part of Israel. The Negev we think of as the desert, but the south of Israel. The Negev that we are talking about is 60% of the land mass of Israel, okay? It only has 13% of the population, however, that lives there. This is why the future of Israel depends on what's going to happen in the Negev, why it's so crucial. There are 9+ million people right now in the state of Israel, only about 1.1 living in the Negev. By all of the projections and studies, we know that by 2040, in about 20 years, we need to ideally double the number of people who are living in the Negev. That means bringing another 1 million people to that area. Well, we saw this as, okay, this is our goal, and we're giving out some little grants and things like that. So how do we make this happen? And why is it important? You all know about the idea of Israel, the startup nation, high tech. Well, what we have to do is we have to change Israel from what it has become as a startup nation to become a scale-up nation. We need to attract people to the Negev. We need to keep them there. We need to grow them. We need to educate them. We need them to be the people that can develop what Israel needs for its future. Right now, the country is concentrated in the Tel Aviv area, in the center of Israel. And in a sense, that's somewhat dangerous if we don't change this, because of that concentration, the quality of life there, the infrastructure problems, the crowding, the education is going to be overwhelming. So what we have to do is disperse this and bring this down to an area where we have space, we have room, okay? If there's sand, it has its own beauty, it has its own quality of life. And for us, when we started this, in a sense, it kind of became a perfect storm because technology came into our lives. When I say our lives, I mean the world at large and in Israel in particular. The Mack Ness Fund entered the area of the Negev at about the time when the roads were improving. Trains were all of a sudden coming down to the Negev, so you could get on a train and easily get from Tel Aviv to Beersheba and to other places. The major headquarters of the army was, and it continued to move south with tens of thousands of people and all the infrastructure that means. And even as we look back and we see good things and bad things happening in our lives, even I'm going to say COVID, it gave us a reset for how we live our lives. And I'm sure we all feel that. How much do we want to work? Where do we want to work? What's our quality of life? And I don't have to live near where I work because I may not be commuting. So all of a sudden this opens up. I can live down and have a much larger land area and house in the Negev than I could in a crowded Tel Aviv apartment and telecommute. So things have changed. What we need to do to increase the population, we need to do 3 things: increase employment, increase housing, and I'll put a third bucket of education, community, and culture. So how are we going to do that? So far, broadly, and then I'll go into some of the specifics, some of the things we've done through the Mack Ness Fund. Yes, we've given out some more specific, smaller grants to, let's say, individual communities, particularly along the Gaza border and the Egyptian border. Over in this area, areas that the population had shrunk. And we know if we don't settle the land and we don't inhabit it, we're going to lose it, okay? So these communities, we helped where we would give stipends to students who were studying nearby and say, if you live in this community, we'll pay part of your tuition, and then you also have to work in the community, volunteer in the community, take care of the elderly. These are the pioneers. We need to support them. We did things like scholarships for Bedouin to study engineering so that they could get jobs, for nursing students so that they would study and then made a commitment to live in the Negev for a couple of years. We helped organize people. We took the mayors together and said to them, you have to be organized. Everyone was out doing their own thing. If you want to lobby the Knesset for more money and things like that, you have to come together as an organization. We did that with grants from our foundation. We helped create regional cooperation from different communities in different areas that had different needs. We were, again, an example of people investing in the region. We took the town of Ofakim, which is partnered with the Greater Metro West community. They had never had a real city plan. We got 80 people around the table, everyone from the educators to the tourism people, to the industry people, to the garbage cleaners and everything like that, and said, everyone should know what's going on here, what the plans are, what our future is, what we're doing, so we can work better together. So these are some of the concepts that we have worked on to make change. And in many ways, we've been enormously successful. To my right, you see the map there. These are some of the examples of different projects that we're presently involved in. So you can see we're all over from the top, where it says Sderot, which I'll remind you is right on the border of Gaza. Every time missiles and bombs are coming in, they're in their shelters. And yet, if you would go there, you cannot believe, instead of running away, the Israeli population is running there. The housing that's being built, the homes, the villas, the industry. We're now working on developing a film industry in that area. Who knew the next Hollywood would be on the Gaza border, because this is the optimism of Israel. We need to be here, we need to populate it, we need to grow. So as you follow this down, just to read through quickly for some of the ideas. So you see agrotech. Each year we learn what's in, what are the needs, what are the buzzwords that's going on, the things that are moving. And this is not just Israel. This is what's moving our world today, because it's moving so quickly. So what you see in Israel is a microcosm of what's going on in the world globally. As we go down there, it says the regional council. Again, we have to work on that small business coalition, because we took business owners after COVID, when everyone was struggling, small business people. I'm sure you know that was happening here, if any of you have a private small business. Well, now we took 9,000 business owners and said, you should be speaking together to see how you can work together, to see how you can have a coalition and improve your own well-being and economic future. As we go down, I'm going to talk about some of those other projects specifically. But again, to my right here, okay, is Jordan. We go down that border, and at the bottom is Eilat. Many of you have probably been in Eilat, a great, I say, Las Vegas kind of town, you know, water, nice hotels, stuff like that. Little else, and they were really struggling. I'm going to speak a little about that, how we've changed that. So this just shows that we're literally all over the map of the Negev. Let's have the next one, and I'll go through some more specifics now. Okay, I'm going to speak to you about a town of Yerucham, which is up in the middle of the Negev area. This was a kind of backwater development town. If you know the history of Israel, unfortunately, many times in the past, from all over the country, frequently poorly educated, not great backgrounds, and they would kind of put in these areas where the government knew we need to have people in the future, but there wasn't necessarily, certainly there wasn't great housing, there wasn't necessarily employment, there wasn't a great school system, and these towns kind of languished, and it was kind of, we'll get to them, but of course, in Israel, there are always other challenges and things going on, and another attack, and another war, and anyway, so we enter the area of Yerucham. Many of these are immigrants from North Africa. One of the things the town did have, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a positive, but it had in the desert, so picture sand, there was a small swamp, okay, a little bit of water. They did have a mayor who had foresight and spoke with the Ness fund, our council, and he had a vision that let's make this swamp into a real lake. Okay, think lake in the desert, and this was a number of years ago. Well, again, as Jerry said, we like to go with the dreamers. We like to jump in and say, let's try something. If it doesn't work, something no one else is doing. Well, you can see that up top. There's a lake now in the town of Yerucham. So think of what this changes for the perception. All of a sudden people talk, well, there's this town. And when I'm going from north to south, because I have to go either with my family on, we're taking a trip on business, there's a lake now in this town. So let's stop there. That brought tourism, that brought people. What I'm not sure they realized, what it also brought back was the natural fauna, the flora. It brought the birds. In Israel every year, tens of thousands of ornithologists come to Israel because it's on a bird migration route. It's not something we talk about a lot, but it's a big industry. Well, all of a sudden, this area became repopulated naturally. It was talk about, preserving the environment. And so what does this bring then? It's an opportunity for the local schools to discuss the environment, to discuss nature, for people to have recreation. It really changed the concept of the town. It took it from something that was, moribund to literally it became alive, okay, in every sense of the word. On the idea of doing business. So we helped start one of the projects. Again, you have people in the Negev. Sometimes one person there of a partner or family has a job, but what's the other person going to do? Unfortunately, who's usually compromising their position is the woman. So, okay, we set up with a project to teach women to create websites, educate them how to do this. This is something you can definitely do from a distance. They can be the marketing tools for people literally all over the world. And we've educated them, and this as a way to do independent web design. They could work at a distance, work at home, and use this as a model, and you'll hear later how it's being replicated. Cultural programs. It said most of these people were from North Africa. Well, these people need pride in who they were. We don't want them to just blend into Israel and become an Israeli. They have a history, they have a culture, they have music. So we supported a cultural center there. And in addition to giving these people their own local pride, it also became a way to have educational tourism. People come from other places to say, I want to be able to teach about the Sephardim and the Moroccans in North Africa. So two things. Number one, physically people would come, but even with the challenge of COVID, they could do it by Zoom. So it became an asset for people all over the world. And they could put forth about their art, their music. And again, it gave a way for this small town to have a reach beyond its borders. Going down, now we're going, as things go on, we realize we want to be, my group always starts to laugh or, because I use this a lot, we want to be strategic. We want to have a bigger bang for our buck. What can we do that will really, make a big impact? Again, now the mayors of Yerucham had changed. The prior one went off to the Knesset. Good people rise to the top, hopefully. We have a woman who's an extraordinary woman who's now the mayor of Yerucham. She had this vision. There was a government tender put out to do cannabis research. again, we all know how cannabis went from, something we didn't talk about or in public too much to something that was on everybody's lips, physically and otherwise. Okay, so she had this idea. We want to be that person. We want to be that place. We want to be the cannabis research center of Israel and the world, maybe. So what does the government do? They put out tenders. So they have to see, the local town has to show that they can raise a certain amount of money first to support this. So, okay, who does that? The Mack Ness Fund. We became the people who gave her that money so she could apply for the government tender, which she did win. Now, why do say we want cannabis center in Yerucham? Remember, you're still in the desert. Well, they had the space, they had the land, and they had the sunshine. So they could do two things. They could grow cannabis, and then they had space to build infrastructure to research it. Now we know that so much of our lives, cannabis is going to be touching in so many ways in terms of the potential for healthcare. It's being used from all ages. Now it's being used, in children with ADHD up to the elderly and end of life comfort and treating with cancer, et cetera. It's enormous what the possibility is. By having this in Yerucham, it has already attracted postdoc fellows who had been affected by the brain drain, because in Israel, so many people are so well educated, but it's a small country. If they couldn't find a job, they're going to go to the top places all around the world. Now we've reversed that a little bit, bringing these people back to the town of Yerucham, and we will all, be affected by the benefits of this, because the research they're going to do is going to affect nutraceuticals, cosmetics, and certainly healthcare. Medical research. Now this year we're funding kind of an extension of that, because we realized if we concentrate on a certain area, we have multiple areas and kind of create its own ecosystem, which feeds off of one or the other. So now this year we're funding a pharma research and development center in Yerucham. So number one, they can do a lot of the work on the cannabis, and they're working into plant genetics, the biochemistry of the ingredients, the neurosciences of it. Because we're going to be using it so much, we have to know how this is going to affect ourselves physically. There are local incubators in town, so this can foster those incubators for other companies. There was a pharmaceutical company, so now they're bringing that together. Ben-Gurion University, which I hope you know about, major university in Beersheba, we're partnering with them. So we're growing all of this, and of course this affects the educational system in that area, because now the local students are coming and learning about pharma and cannabis, and they've opened a center for engineering. Ben-Gurion University just opened relatively recently a school for sustainability and climate change. Talk about the buzzwords of what's going on now. Okay, so where is some of their research now going to be done to support that? In our research and development center, which we have funded. Some of the other things they're working on there: precision farming, artificial intelligence, desert agriculture, machine learning. Our latest thing is aerospace industry. I mean, the things we're getting involved in, I never thought they were certainly not in my exposure. All of a sudden we go there and the same mayor says, there's another tender. We want to develop an aerospace industry. Really? I mean, she's just on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And of course, these are the things that are on the forefront of our world today. Unfortunately, we know our wars will be and are already. We see it, right now in Russia and Ukraine, they're going to be fought with drones. This is something that's so important. It's going to affect our lives. When a hospital needs, a certain blood type of medication, it's going to be sent by drone. You're going to be getting your groceries by drone. When you said, at the end of a meal, I think I should have ice cream, you'll be able to contact with an app and someone will deliver ice cream to you with the drone. Don't smile and laugh already, because I know this is happening. I have a friend that's his biggest order, and they're doing that in a supermarket out in the Midwest. So this is going to be our life. They want to be on the forefront. Again, why should they get the aerospace tender? And right now we're waiting to see if the government will give it to Yerucham. Again, they have the weather, they have the space, they have the land. This is our future. what's happening in the region when we were there last time. We saw two young women. I don't even know if they were high school age. They came and showed us they won a contest. They created their own drone. These young women, we're talking STEM education, boys, girls, everyone. It's attracting companies, it's attracting researchers. It will be supported by the Civil Aviation Authority in Israel, Ministry of Science, Ministry of Transportation. We're bringing all these parts together. This is all exciting stuff that I have to say we've been kind of the linchpin for. So what we're doing is changing a development town to its center for academia. Let me take you to another part of the Negev. This area along here, it's a fenceless border with Jordan, okay? In that area, it's a long area, 6% of the land of Israel. It has 0.5% of the population. 4,000 people live there, mainly in agriculture, and they are producing 50% of the produce of all of Israel, okay? Talk about a challenge and stress. It's an area that has less than 1 inch of rain a year, producing 50% of the produce of Israel. Now, how do you get to do this? Well, a lot of failure, but right now there's a lot of success that's going on there, because they have to figure out what can we grow under these circumstances, in this temperature, in this arid situation, what will grow best? So what do? Instead of just planting and planting and planting, you build research. So one of the first times we went there, I said, I can't believe we're in the middle of no place. All you see is sand. And then there was this state-of-the-art research lab, and we're going and talking with people, again, people who had come from all over the world. And excitingly, there was even like a Jordanian woman who had come and was doing research. So all of the politics and stuff that you read in the newspaper, it's not necessarily what's going on the ground here. You know, this is on the border. There is cooperation. There are people going back and forth. Unfortunately, it doesn't make good news, but these are the stories we should be talking about. So they're doing the research of how do we make food? They've learned many of the answers, but they're not just sharing themselves. They're not just increasing their own bank account. If you look at the slide here on my right, the lower right-hand side, you see, I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but these are people, non-Israelis, people from all over the world. We go there one day again. There's mostly nothing there. And one day we go, there's a fair. There are tents and tents and tents and tens of buses. And, you know, I see people coming out of the buses, and I go up to these people and say, where are you from? They were from Myanmar. They were from Thailand. They were from all over the world, literally. Well, again, I'm pretty well connected with what's going in Israel. I did not know that about 25,000 students a year come from all over the world, from poor countries, to study agriculture in this area of the Arava, because they've learned how to do it. They know how to have success. They teach these people so that they can go back to the Far East, Africa, India, Pakistan, all of these places. Again, places where you would think they might not even have relations with Israel. And they are teaching these people to grow food. We're feeding the world. The research that's going on is amazing. I put this picture up because, again, we talk about the desert, and again, it has its own beauty, but there are many areas that it's wide open space. Look at the lush fruit on the right, look at the swimming on the left, not your images of what a desert is. This is what these people have done. We have helped them all along the way. We've helped them with marketing. We've helped them with their Airbnbs. We helped them develop an artist colony. We've helped supported this research lab. Right now, one of the research labs is that they did studies with algae. It's something that they can grow there. I mean, they know what they can grow, and then they figure, what can we do with it? Well, they got millions of dollars like a year or two after we supported them from the European Union to discuss the possibility of algae for superfoods, for nutraceuticals, for cosmetics, all this stuff. European Union is not usually throwing money at Israel so readily, but they realize this is where the future is. This is what's important. Now these people are studying date pits. I'm not sure how they got to it and how one point got to the other, but they feel there's a connection with the cure of Alzheimer's and date pits. They can go to dates in the desert. They're working on this. They're using zebrafish, tiny little fish. Who knew in my medical career that the neurologic system of a zebrafish is similar to the human? They're doing research on this and studying Parkinson's. We've given little bits of money for these areas, and this is what's going on. So they want to develop now farm to table food industry because they have the products. So we're helping them to support a growth industry that will bring tourism, that will bring jobs, that will bring more people there. JNF built this state-of-the-art center. They want to do a wellness industry. Well, they have the bike trails, they have the running trails, they have the outdoor places you can do yoga, they have the great healthy food. So now they have a place that teams can come and people can come from all over the world to work on their sports and wellness and this type of thing. All of this brings growth and jobs, growth to the area, okay? Down south, all the way down here, as I said, we went there. A lot, you can swim and you can stay in a hotel, but not too much else. Well, a theater group found us and we realized, you know, it's not just about giving jobs and housing for people to live. They need something else. They need quality of life, right? Everyone needs a little culture. They need something to enrich their lives. The first time we went there, we got off a bus and there was one producer, a director from Tel Aviv, famous guy, and a couple of actors who had gone to Tel Aviv and wanted to create a theater group. What they did with almost nothing was great in terms of doing a little presentation to us, but to sustain themselves was almost impossible. They're doing a couple of productions a year. Well, the Israeli government will support a group like this if they do at least 100 productions a year times 3 years. So we supported them for their last 2 years to give someone who would do marketing for them and all these other things. So the actors could really work on acting. They were doing everything. Well, I have to tell you, this is going to be one of our biggest successes, I believe, because right now this group is doing over 200 performances a year. Again, big sights on what they could do in the future. If you've been to Eilat, if you've flown down there in the past, there's a small little airport right in the center of town. Well, that's not there anymore. They moved that. There happens to be another airport outside of Eilat, which of course brings Europeans, et cetera, directly there when it's warm in the winter. In that space, center of town, will be the new international desert campus for the performing arts that these people have grown or will grow into a place where there will be a children's theater, dance company, and a cultural center for Eilat, which started out from us supporting them, where we had a couple people. They have literally tens of actors waiting to come. They want to come and move to Eilat, but they tell them, you can't come yet because we haven't finished building it and we don't have the housing and everything yet. Their goal is to bring 200 actors and their families from Israel there. And up until now, while they're not done at this point, they've had this Resi Desert Festival where they've brought people from all over the world to come and do programming and things like that. Again, it changes the area, it creates culture, it changes the school system. If any of you people have been to the Berkshires and know Shakespeare and Company up there, well, the only place in the world that they have collaborated with ever, and particularly outside of America, is the last 2 years, they went to Eilat. They brought Shakespeare to Eilat with this company, which of course now picture young Israeli kids who speak Hebrew doing Shakespeare. It exposes them to Shakespeare. It gives them the confidence of getting on stage, the exposure, and it gives them the community. I believe this is what we will ultimately be doing. Is I liken it to the Upper West Side of Manhattan. That was a place you didn't want to walk until Lincoln Center was built, and it changed the face of the West Side of New York. I think we're going to be doing that with Eilat, and it's extremely exciting. So these are a couple of ideas about what's going on. We've done on the way some smaller projects, which are also exciting. So again, picture sand in the desert. Well, in the areas of Beersheba, this is now what you see. High-tech parts, corporate, headquarters and things like that. One of the slam dunks we had was a group of 2 graphic artists who got together and said they wanted to make an app for tourism in their area, which was just on the very western side of the Negev. Picture almost like a subway map, that if you were going to an area, you're taking your family and you said, we're going to go to this region. Let's see where we'll stop, what we'll do. Well, their app would say, you're on this road as you're traveling. If you want someplace to eat, stop here. If you need gas, stop here. If you want to sleep over, stop here. There's a tourism spot here, et cetera, all in one app. It became so successful that now it's been duplicated in other regions of Israel. And I would guess they are really going to go through the ceiling. And we're going to be using things like that as well. Remember, all the things that we do in our everyday lives, like Waze and Move It, I mean, these all came out of Israel. So when we help these little startups do these things, it's going to change the way we go on vacation. You'll just take your little app and you'll go and you'll pick out what you want to do. During COVID, the challenges of small businesses, with Ben-Gurion University, we partnered and we set up a project called Negev Prime, which teaches people to do Amazon online businesses. Again, you can stay at home, live in the Negev, put your feet up, look at the beautiful scenery, and create a business. Now, Ben-Gurion University asked us initially, and we changed it and put them on for a year because we said, we don't want it just to be your students who have the capability to pay for tuition and are studying at the university. We want you to open it up to the Negev residents. And that's what they ultimately did. So we're trying to be a connector, to do networking, to create different communities and relationships in the Negev. And I think that we're really being successful with it. These are just some of the ideas, some of the projects that we've done so far. And I could go on, but I hope you see the impact we've had. There's sometimes the risks we've taken, but some of the excitement and the accomplishments that are happening. And you should be proud just of the fact that these things are going on in Israel. And certainly for me to be a part of it is amazing. Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn now. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I'm Odelia, and I'm the director of the Mack Fund here in Israel. It's going to be very hard to speak after Jerry and Howard, but I do have just one advantage. I'm the only one who actually cleaning the desk that you saw in all of the pictures from my balcony. So actually, Howard and Jerry mentioned a lot of our projects. And I have to say that this is always a struggle between the board members and between me and between the people of the Negev. And actually, when we try to figure out which project we would like to fund, it's always the thought about whether we want to be the engine or be in the caboose. And all of the projects that Howard just mentioned sometimes was an actually dilemma for us, because as Howard mentioned, the medical cannabis tender with the government, this is about getting from the government 165 million shekels for 6 years for a city like Yerucham. So if they want to win $50 million, they only needed to had at the beginning $70K. And why? Because a small and I can say neglected town at the south of Israel, Yerucham, very small town, do not have the capability to have the people or the knowledge to write and to participate in this kind of tender. They need to hire professionals. They have, like Howard mentioned, the sun, the land, and a lot of others advantages, like the human source, people who live there and can work in this field of medical cannabis, but they don't really have. They actually asked us to fund was to give them $70K in addition to have some professional person who can actually write down the standard for them or help them to recruit the different companies that can help them participate this tender. And I think it was a great success because of the theme of the Mayor of Yerucham, because not a lot of cities in the state of Israel and mainly in the Negev feel that they have enough confidence and capabilities to participate in governmental tender. And the Mayor of Yerucham decided she would like to take this challenge. And I have to say that she beat a lot of big companies and big universities, and she did it only with our 70K. So this 70K became $50 million from the government. Howard also mentioned the tribe in Yerucham. So again, it was course with many women that we wanted them to know how to create Wix website and earn more money. And what happened is that the government, the Ministry of Interior, said, okay, that was a great success. We would like to do the same thing with the same association, Eretz Yir, that we funded, but with the Bedouin community. One of my jobs, one of my goals here in the Negev, as a person who lives in the Negev, is to be a kind of censor, and not only to get applications when we publish the RFP for different associations. So one day I was traveling here in the Negev, and I wanted to participate in one of the hackathons. They call it Funkathon, and they wanted to create an app for the Negev, the tourism, what Howard just mentioned. And I said, okay, you won the first place, Metro Negev, why don't you apply to Ness? So they applied to Ness, we gave them a small grant, and after that, the rest is history. They actually created this app, and I have to say, the people who created was a social worker and a graphic designer. I don't know if you're familiar with this big events of hackathon when you get a challenge and actually come up with ideas. They came up with this idea of app of traveling in the Negev. We asked them to apply. I have to say that during COVID, the Ministry of Economy had published letters here in Israel to do something for the small and medium businesses. So that was right in time. They applied and got from the government 1 million shekels. In addition to duplicate this app to different areas in the Negev, because this app is actually helping small and medium businesses, you know, the small restaurants, guide tours, etc. I think we can go on to the next slide, because Howard already mentioned that. And I will tell you about another leverage. Look at this festival. So this is a young initiator named Yael. She wanted to create a festival about the neglected, very not beautiful buildings at the south of Beersheba, you know, and a tough neighborhood. And she said these buildings are creating the story and the history of the city and the Negev, of all the immigrants that used to came to Israel from all around the world. And these buildings stayed the way they had looked like when they first came to Israel. So she said, this is a story. We would like to create a festival about these buildings. It's called in Hebrew shikunim, neglected buildings. And she said, let's do it in the tough neighborhoods, and let's, on the wall of this building, let's have a film festival. And all the film are about these neighborhoods and about these buildings. So she created this festival. We gave her 5K, as you can see, and she leveraged the money. She got funds from the municipality in Beersheba, the Ministry of Culture, etc. And this is the second year that she is holding this festival. Actually, it was the last summer, like 2 months ago. It was a huge success, and a lot of people from Beersheba and around participated, as you can see, in this festival. The next slide will be about one of the projects that we're the most proud, I think, or very proud, if not the most. So this is about creating a coalition that will strengthen small businesses. During COVID, we felt that we have to do something to help small and medium businesses. And we published a unique RFP, not with the regular grants that we used to give, but smaller grants. We said, okay, we have to do something. This is an emergency time. And we got a lot of applications that concern small and medium businesses, you know, like creating a website, online store, etc., from different municipalities that actually are right next to each other. We got at least 12 similar applications. We said no to everyone, but we said we are going to say no, but we will say yes if you will all the organizations that applied similar project will sit together and try to bring up some sort of initiative that concludes all of you. And they created this small and medium coalition from all around the Negev. Here, what you can see in the picture is the representative of this coalition from all around the Negev, with the MK Michael Biton, who used to be the mayor of Yerucham many years ago, but now he's the deputy, he's the head of the Committee of Economy in the Knesset, and used to be the deputy of the Minister of Defense. And he's hosted them in the Knesset. There was a big event in the Knesset. They talked about this coalition and actually got the Knesset certificate about how important it is what they're doing, and they are going to continue being involved with the Committee of Economy in the Knesset, and maybe eventually will also get budget from the Knesset and from the from the government to continue to do what they do. For me, I think for me the meaning of Ness here as a civilian of the Negev is to give the opportunities for a dream. All of the initiative and more that we just mentioned is about creating the dream. And you can see that people around here in the Negev, it's not just everyone know the name Mack Ness Fund, especially association. You can see in different places plug, and you can see the recognition. And on the last Yom HaAtzmaut in Yerucham, with a lot of projects that we founded there, I was lighting the torch of Yom HaAtzmaut in Yerucham on behalf of all the Ness Fund. The next picture is there from Ben Gurion University. They gave us the honor for different initiatives that we funded with them. It's a great honor to be the representative of Ness here in the Negev, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Adelia. Can we have the next slide? So I just want to kind of wrap up a little bit to take the perspective, and we've shown you some of the specifics and things that we've done. I think the important message is to realize, first of all, what's going on in Israel every day. The opportunity to be a part of this has been amazing. We've been, met people I would never have met and learned about areas I would never have known about. I put in this quote here: in Israel, in order to be a realist, you have to believe in miracles, from Ben Gurion. And really, you see miracles going on every day in Israel. The fact that it exists, that in of itself is a miracle. You walk around there. I've been involved, for 60 years in various activities in Jewish community, and I just have to mention it because I think we take it for granted. Every Russian I see in Israel here, where I was at, it's a miracle. We brought these people out. You see the Ethiopians. Don't take it for granted. It's a miracle they're there. I mean, this is really the ingathering of the exiles into this country, and to see that it has become a leader in what it has to offer the world. I gave you some examples, but how everyone in the world, their life is going to be affected by the health things that are coming out, by the technology. It's going to be a cybersecurity capital of the world. Unfortunately, this is our world. All these, new countries, and it's wonderful, the diplomatic changes with the Abraham Accords. It's mind-boggling. That's a miracle too. Not all of a sudden did everyone decide, we love Israel and the Jews, but because of our technology, because of what we have to offer, because they know that the same way we've done these kinds of things and are doing it in the Negev, we can do it in those other countries. The amount of money and business that's going back and forth now between UAE and Bahrain and Morocco, and this is just the beginning of what's going to be. So I think we have to realize with pride and knowledge, and I ask you if you can, first of all, if you haven't been to Israel recently, go. If you've been recently, go again. Spend time. Not always a place where you go to the Negev. Contact us. We can, maybe hook you up or give you ideas or get you the Metro Negev app, and you can figure out where to go. But it's something that it's changing. It's exciting. This upper picture, it's not like, the Hudson River there in New York in the back. That's a new lake that was built in just the outskirts of Beersheba. I mean, 50 years ago, when I started going to Israel, you went there on Thursdays to see a camel at the Bedouin market. That was it. There was nothing else there. This is a high-tech city with a skyline and a new lake where you can go boating. And remember, it's in the desert. And so what we've accomplished is going to be all over the world. Israel is going to be feeding the world. It solved its water problem. It's helping the rest of the world with their water problems. From Africa to California, they're all coming to Israel for help. So I know you're here really from the Israel committee and stuff. Take pride, educate yourself, know what we're doing, and be excited about it, and talk to people, because it is a miracle. And I will just wish you a Shana Tova. Susan, I want to thank you. You're over the top in what you've done, but I look here and I said, so for the holiday, you all have fruit that you could put on your table and say Shachayanu, and may we celebrate New Year with good things, good health, and the growth of our state. And I hope all the best for all of you and your families.
I'm Leni Carniel. I'm the director of the Grata Fund, and I have the amazing privilege of working with people like Howard, who is the chair of the committee, and wonderful. Gary Plansbaum, who is in Israel. Next slide, Josh. Lou Beckerman, who's here today. Thank you, Lou. These are the volunteers that serve on the committee that dedicate themselves to reading the applications, going to Israel on their own dime, and helping to make the decisions. We could not do it without Odelia, my partner in crime and partner in many ways, who is tirelessly looking for the best projects and where money can be spent wisely. Jerry's comment about Mack Ness being tight is something we take very seriously. And Odelia takes that very seriously, that the money is spent wisely. So it's a committee that's dedicated to working for making the best use of the dollars. The next slide. So what I also wanted to say is I work with the Jewish Community Foundation, and the position that I have is a wonderful position to work with this fund and another fund that are legacy stories. But this is what the Jewish Community Foundation does for people. It listens to what your philanthropic dreams are, sometimes puts donors together, philanthropists together, and says, here's a project that the group can fund. And sometimes it's being a part of a funding circle that are funding women's activities, et cetera, or being a part of a committee like this. So this is what the Jewish Community Foundation does. We do this and we seek to build momentum, not only to the Jewish community and beyond. And in the next slide, what's really exciting is I've been with the Jewish Community Foundation for many years, and I've seen the growth expand exponentially in terms of dollars and in terms of dedication to the donors. So we now have almost $800 million under management with 780 funds. These are funds like an individual's donor advised fund that I happen to have and our family has. And it's one of my favorite ways of being able to pay my synagogue dues and pay my gifts to organizations. The community has not only promoted funds like our donor advised fund, but other endowments, large and small. In fact, as a result of some of the group of smaller endowments, which in a prior job had the opportunity to oversee, but every year those small endowments are put together and a large RFP is put out to the Jewish community, to synagogues and organizations in the community. And this year, I'm happy to, and Josh can verify this, and I'm sure the president can, that the Jewish Community Foundation awarded a grant to your synagogue for a Torah study program. There were 81 applications for various grants, but these are small endowments. They're giving out small money every year. So your community really benefits by being a part of the Jewish Community Foundation. So I wanted, if you have any questions after that regarding the Jewish Community Foundation, but I want to bring up Howard and field any questions. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to have us field questions in the audience and on Zoom. Who would like to start with questions?
How do applicants hear about this fund and learn? I mean, obviously it's new to us. We didn't, maybe some people here knew about it, but I certainly did not. How do applicants in Israel find out about this opportunity for them?
You may want to repeat the question.
Okay, the question was, and this I'm going to direct to you, Odelia. How do applicants in Israel know about the request for proposals and to apply to the Mack Ness Fund? Odelia, would you like to answer?
Yeah, so every year around September, before the holidays, we're publishing an RFP. We're publishing it at the Federation website and at the Mack Ness Fund website. We will have a new one in a week, so you will all get to see it. It's in English. So, and we are publishing it on Facebook. And besides that, I'm having a yearly session where I inviting different kind of organization here around the Negev to participate and hear me about the Mack Ness Fund, about the RFP. I'm giving them the explanation about how to apply, which kind of project we are funding, etc. And a lot of organizations are actually participating in this meeting. So that these are the ways that we are publishing the RFP.
I would just like to add, just for informational purposes, so the money that we send from here goes through the Federation system to the Jewish agency. It all has to be in 501c3 type of things. And all of the grants that we give in Israel have to go to an NGO. So a local town or whatever can't just come to us and say, well, we want to just do this or that, or a group of people. They have to be connected with an NGO, all just so it's all, done correctly in terms of tax deduction, and we know where the funds are, and they're followed all the way. But
NGOs are
networking there.
non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, and in Israel, they're sometimes called associations. So they often want to work with the municipality, but our funds are going to a nonprofit. And in Israel, we make sure that that nonprofit status is up to date. Other questions? Other questions on Zoom? Oh, yes.
So it was just an amazing presentation, so inspirational. So thank you so much. So you mentioned that the Mack Ness Fund will be closing in whatever 10 years. How was the decision made to do that as opposed to keeping it in perpetuity? And was that based on, I'm sure it's a lot of work for people like yourself. So how was that decided? And is there a goal that you want to achieve before closing the fund?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The question was, how do we make the decision to limit the fund, its life instead of perpetuity? And I'll say that the decision was made by the council. We really sat down, and we had been giving, originally we were giving typical 5% of the funds, and it would go in perpetuity. As I outlined before a number of years ago, when we just saw things changing so quickly in the Negev, that the railroads had just put in and the army was moving south and so many things were happening, the feeling was, if we're not going to be out there out front really giving some significant money to some of these projects, we're going to miss the boat. We'll be around for a long time, but it's just going to go right past us. And so we made the decision that we would kind of go out of business. Last year was very good for us. This year, probably not so much, in terms of the market and the way the funds are invested here in terms of the growth. But we made an active decision and said, you know what, things are going so quickly now, we really need to have the impact now. And so this past year, we allocated $1 million, which is the first time we've given out that amount of money. But we felt the needs were there, the projects were there. We've really scaled up, as I said, from smaller individual, many allocations to fewer, larger strategic things. And to be strategic, you can't give someone $10,000. Anyone else?
So there is a small piece of land left, as many of you may know. So we're waiting until that goes through zoning, and we've had a lot of ecological issues to deal with in the land. So once, we don't expect that's going to extend the of this grant, of this fund that much longer. We don't solicit funds, but some people have contributed small amounts, so that may help it grow a little bit. But our whole emphasis is make the impact now, be the engine. And Jerry and groups, and I think Eleanor was on here before, who was one of the first, she was the first chair of the Mack Ness Fund. So we really appreciate the dedication, and those are hard to see. There she is, Eleanor. Eleanor, you're on mute. Just 1 minute.
We need to unmute her.
Yeah.
Eleanor, you can now unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a couple, I don't have a question, I have a couple of things to say. This has been very, very exciting for me. I would like to tell you that I happen to be lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. I was president of the Central Federation when this whole Mack Ness thing began. And the first time I went to Israel with the then Israeli representative, we went to the Negev. I guess we went to Beersheba with a gift or a grant of $25,000 that we were willing to give to a guy named Ophir Fisher, who had a dream. And he said he was going to bring people into the Negev because people who live in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv and the surrounding areas never went to the Negev. It's a desert. What do you do there? So he was going to organize a musical festival and a photography festival and bring lots of people into the Negev with this 25. I said, what are you going to do with $25,000, which is what we were offering? And he said, that's just seed money. It's just the beginning. And other people will see that somebody has confidence in us. And it was a great success, and the rest is history. I'd also like to comment on Jerry. Jerry had said that he spoke with Shimon Peres and told him, you ain't seen nothing yet. Some years later, I had the good fortune to meet with Shimon Peres in his office, along with Stanley Stone and a few other people. And he asked me to present what we were doing in the Negev, because he remained very much involved, and he was very, very complimentary of what we were doing and encouraging us all along the way. I'd also like to say that Mack Ness, I don't know, he was a very amazing and unusual person. I never met him. I only saw the bed that he slept in, which when I saw it, it was a sleeping bag on a cot in his apartment. But he could have left his money to anybody. There was a Jewish soul inside of him. He was not connected to any of the congregations or any of the federations or any Jewish organization, as far as I know. But push comes to shove, he was a Jew, and that's where he wanted his money to go. And I think that's kind of significant. I would also like to say that Howard's list about Yerucham missed the very last exciting thing that happened, that they're making wine in Yerucham. The New York Times about a week ago had 2 full-page stories about the wine grapes that are growing in the Negev, and they particularly mentioned Yerucham, which is making wine. That's the most wonderful thing that the New York Times ever wrote about Israel. I'd also like to say, these are all very personal things. My son, who's lived in Israel for 40 years and has many children and several grandchildren, is just bought a house in the town of Meitar, which I think is practically a neighbor of Ophelia, who lives in Beersheba. Is that correct? Yes. And yes. I think Meitar was a town that was developed by the Or movement.
Right, Kermit is right next to Meitar when you actually visited there. And
Yes,
it's right to, you have been, all of you, the Ness board, you have been in Kalmit, that's all actually created, which is right next to Meital, right
Oh.
across the road.
right. I hope to visit him when he actually moves in on October 2nd. And the last
Right.
thing I'd like to say is that I would like to congratulate Har Shalom for having an Israel committee, for promoting something like this, for having this, and the people who have listened have certainly learned a great deal. I wonder, is this event being recorded, and is it available? Is it
It is.
available?
Thank you, Josh. It is.
Okay, thank you very much for listening to me.
Can I add just a couple of comments? I've tried to limit my time because I wanted you to hear what Howard had to say, but there's two things that have always, I wanted to share with you. One is about the loan fund. The loan fund had a special moment. When Russia invaded Crimea, we immediately hit them with sanctions. And what that did was basically bring disaster on the pepper farmers in the Arava. And we're talking about scores and scores and scores of farmers who suddenly had no market. They had lots of peppers and no market, and they were facing disaster. And before anything happened, before the government could step in, the loan fund immediately set aside $500,000 in loan guarantees. And instead of having all of our applicants come to Beersheba every month, all of the members of the loan fund went down to the Arava every week. And we came to the farmers and we sat all day processing application after application after application, saving the fortunes and almost the lives of 20, 40, 60, 80, perhaps 100 farmers, giving them the opportunity to plant new crops before a season was lost and finding new markets. And I think it was the loan fund's finest hour. And I think every one of them in their hearts breathed, thank you, Mack Ness. The other thing I wanted to say, because it always intrigues me, when we first came to that theater group in Eilat, and it was the thing that sold me on them. They came, and when we came, they told us, we just put on an amazing performance. It was very successful. We just put on a performance of The Old Man and the Sea. Think about that.
Hemingway.
It takes place entirely on water. How did they do it? How did they do it? First of all, they took the sound effects from the movie, and then to get rid of the desert, they blindfolded their audience. Entire play was done with the audience using its own imagination. It was a huge success. These are the kind of people we were talking about. It blows me away to this day. The whole idea that one man gave us, okay, $15 million. I don't even think he imagined the kind of things that are happening today because of him. And if we have only 12 more years to live as a fund, if we can do half of what we have accomplished in the last 15 years, the Negev is going to be an entirely different place. You can't be prouder of your community and what we're doing there, honestly.
So with Jerry's comment and with Eleanor's comment to thank the synagogue for allowing us to speak, I'd like to end and wish everyone here a very, very sweet and wonderful new year, Rosh Hashanah, and to everyone. And to Lou, who's here as well. Thank you, Lou, for being on the committee with us. To all who joined us on Zoom, thank you so much. To everyone here, to Josh, to Susan, to Shelley, to the whole committee, Debbie, thank you all so much. And of course, it's thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all right, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
I couldn't say much.
Bye.
Good night in Israel.
Yeah.
Can we end?
Thank you very, very much for having me. Coach. Thank you.
And take your, Lauren, still on there. Hello, I hope you're well.
All right, thanks so much. That was over.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.